the PowerPoint immediately following this to the list of participants. And so it's myself, Dan Frummel, and I'm joined by Aaron Christian today. And Aaron is going to get us started.
Good morning again, everyone. Just to review, we're going to do, our agenda today is to go over the pre-steps for the CFA, which includes the needs assessment and allowable expenses, actually completing the CFA, the different sections of Title I-A neglected and Title I-D question by question with suggested and examples of the responses that we're looking for. Also, we're going to provide some contact information and resources for you at the end of the presentation. So for the needs assessment, the purpose of the needs assessment is to just exactly what it says, to assess the needs of the facility and the students that the facility serves. So when we're looking at that, some questions to consider is what is working and what measure of growth are you looking at for the facility? What are the gaps that we see in data? So we want you to review the data, the CSPR data in particular, and then any other sources of data that you may have. And then identify gaps in that, look at what worked last year versus what you want to support again, moving forward, and other additional supports you may want to add as we move forward.
And this is an area, when we think about the needs assessment, I think that this is an area that you guys are real experts in and will be a real resource to the facilities because you guys have probably completed a lot of needs assessments in your time.
So I'm going to briefly hit just how to conduct a needs assessment. Like Dan said, some of you have been doing this for many years and conducting needs assessments with your public schools. So it's basically the same thing. Survey your students, teachers, staff, discuss with your parents, stakeholders, review the CSPR data, any other data that you may have, STAR reading, math, RTI data, benchmarks, whatever you do for pre and post testing, any of those data streams. And then a joint meeting between the LEA and the facility is an absolute must for you to be able to find out what the facility actually needs and kind of direct them in where to put their funding for the year. When you conduct a needs assessment, it needs to be an ongoing thing. So as you're going through your year and questions arise or issues arise or things that you say, hey, we really want to focus on that next year, kind of jot those down as you've been going. I hope you have all been doing that. We had discussed that in the fall trainings, and everybody said that they were that was definitely something they would be interested in. January, begin gathering feedback, so your surveys, your discussions, and things like that with your parents and your stakeholders. February, since it is February now, conduct your planning meetings to review the CSPR data, any other data, discuss the needs, discuss your results and where you want to take the program. And then March, begin to complete the needs assessment form. And here is the new needs assessment form. It is a document that I sent to you when I sent out the reminder email last week. It is attached and it is in electronic form. So if you will open that document and save it to your desktop, then input your district information, save it again, and then email it to your facilities if you have multiples. Then your information is already on the actual document. They don't have to fill it in. Then they fill out their information, respond to the questions, and email it back to you, and everything is digital. So that works great because I set it up so that they will expand and it won't mess up the margins or anything like that. So this document will expand as you go. And so I hope that I have designed it to be very user-friendly.
Before we go into the allowable expenses, I just want to do a check once, make sure that everybody can still hear us. And then two, just to see, are there any questions about the needs assessment or the needs assessment form? Like I said, Erin, or as Erin said, she sent it out last week. When we send out the PowerPoint, we'll resend that to everybody again. Any questions on that part? You guys can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Great. All righty. And if you don't care, just to mute your phones as we go into the next section there. We're getting a little bit of background noise, and that'll just make the audio a little bit clearer. So step 2, allowable expenses. And allowable expenses really ties back into our needs assessment, and something that we've been saying over the last year is we really want to change the way that Title I funds are used in facilities. We don't want this to be viewed as a wish list of things that we'd like to have or that would be nice to have. It should really be items that we know are going to benefit the students that are receiving them, looking at what are the needs of our program and tying everything back into that so that we can see greater student success in our CSBR data. So again, the purpose of the funds really to assist in providing that high quality education to students that are in these programs. One of the areas that we've seen a lot of facilities start to focus on this past year, we hope to see continuing, is focusing on that area of transition, because that's such an important area for many of our students as they transition from the facility, the group home, the JDC back into the public schools. So questions to think about when you're receiving requests on, is this something that we could spend our Title I funds on? We want to think, is it reasonable? Is it allowable? And is it necessary? So that necessary part is going to go back to the needs assessment. And then overall, how will the children and youth benefit? Another area that I like to highlight here that I don't have a bullet for, but are they asking for something that they should already be providing? So when we think about programs and think about the services that they offer, if it's something they should already be providing or is already in their contract with other agencies, that would not be something that we would want to spend Title I funds on. So for example, if we have a therapeutic residential treatment center that wants to spend funds on counseling for students, well, chances are if you're in a therapeutic residential center, they should provide counseling for the students. That's most likely going to be a part of some of the contracts that they already have and really is an integral part of their makeup. And so that would be something that would most likely be denied unless it was under a unique circumstance. Another example, if it were in a juvenile detention center and wanted to pay for a guard, obviously if you're running a juvenile detention center, you need to have guards to run it, so that would not be an allowable expense. Going outside of that, we really want to look at this as we look at many of our other Title I schools. Is it something that I would typically purchase for one of my other Title I schools? And if the answer is yes, then most likely the answer is going to be yes as far as using it for one of the facilities, one of the neglect and delinquent programs. We had distributed a list back in the fall of some allowable expenses. Again, it goes back to whether it's necessary, has it been identified in the needs assessment, is it reasonable? If it meets all those and is on the list, then most likely it's going to be an allowable purchase. Again, we'll send that list out to everybody when we send out the PowerPoint so that you guys have that again to refer to as you get ready to fill out the CFAs. One of the big things to highlight is that all of the funds should be identified in the facility needs assessment. So to give you an idea of how we do this is when you finish your needs assessment, you're uploading that to ePlan. When we review your CFA, we pull up the needs assessment on one page, we pull up the narrative questions on another page, and we pull up the budget on a third screen, and we look to see that there's alignment between the three. So if in the needs assessment it says, we really need support in reading, but then in the budget, all of the funds are going towards math or towards field trips or something else that's not reading related, then it would most likely be kicked back for that. Now, you don't have to list every single tiny item in the needs assessment, like we're going to buy 15 pencils and 20 pieces of paper. You can put a more general statement such as supplies, but get as specific as you can, especially on the major things. So, for example, if we're going to spend a large sum of money on professional development, what's that going to look like? Are they going to be attending PI? Are they going to be attending LEAD conference? Do we know how many people approximately will be going? We know that there's going to be some fluctuation in that, but again, by identifying those main areas and adding that supporting detail, if we see that in the needs assessment and see that in the budget, we're going to be able to have that strong alignment, and there's going to be a much greater chance that the CFA is passed on the first time. And again, just as a disclaimer, because this question came up a couple times throughout the year, we also want to make sure that any of the services purchased through Title I are not requirements of a student's IEP. So we wouldn't want to pay for speech therapy services or communication devices that are listed in a student-specific IEP. Again, this is a list that we distributed back in the fall. Again, I won't read through it. We'll resend it to you guys again, but I think that'll help serve as a kind of jumping off point for you guys as you start some of those conversations. Okay, so before we actually go into the questions that are listed on the CFA, does anyone have any questions about allowable expenses? Okay. Again, if you haven't muted your phone, we ask that you just mute your phone or computer, eliminating any background noise. We're going to go into completing the CFA. We're going to walk through the neglected section and the delinquent section, and we're going to go over every single question that is asked, tell you exactly what we're looking for, and provide some examples. The questions have changed for this year, and hopefully in a good way. We hope that you guys will agree with us. We have eliminated quite a few questions from each section and turned them into assurances where we could, or tried to reword them so that they make a little more sense. A lot of our guidance on these questions comes from our federal guidance in NDTAC, which is just kind of broad because they're looking at things on a national level. And so we really tried to think about how we can answer these questions for Tennessee, still meet the federal standards, but still have it make sense to you guys. So hopefully the questions will read a little bit easier this year and make a little more sense. And again, we've eliminated quite a few questions off the list so that you can really concentrate on the ones that are important.
Okay, we're going to start with the Title I-A neglected section. And you will also note this year that the sections for open response are a lot shorter this year. So we tried to make it as streamlined as possible for you. So under program details, this is going to be question number 1, to describe how the Title I-A neglected funds will be used in each facility to support the educational programs for students in the facility. So under this one, we suggest that you list the intended purchases and outcomes expected as a result of the purchases. So I gave you an example here. Poplar Grove will purchase a supplemental reading program, Read 180, to increase the reading levels of the students by at least one grade level.
In this question, again, this question is going to relate most closely to the needs assessment and what was identified in the needs assessment, and it's also going to relate most closely to the budget and the items that you're specifically putting into the budget. Question number 2, before Aaron goes into that, if you remember last year, and I think we may have this later on here as well, last year question number 2 asked you to describe the formal agreement or the MOU between the LEA and the facility. In thinking about that for this year, we felt that was pretty redundant. A lot of people just ended up copying and pasting their MOU, which was fine. For this year, we're asking that you upload a copy of the MOU that you have between the LEA and the facility. So hopefully this will save your fingers some typing and eliminate some redundancy there. So at the end, you'll be uploading 2 things, the needs assessment with the facility and the MOU with the facility, and then that'll eliminate the need to explain that in the narrative questions.
Okay, for question number 2, describe the characteristics of children and youth participating in the program, including learning difficulties, substance abuse, and other special needs at each of the facilities being served. So just describe the program details for this facility. So I put an example in here. This program serves males from ages 12 to 18 who are in need of A&D counseling for substance abuse. This is a short-term care facility where the average stay is less than 90 days, and most students are placed by guardians or insurance. So we kind of hit the main details here in this response. Who are they serving? So males, females, ages. Why are they there? The A&D counseling for substance abuse. It's a short-term care facility, so either short-term or long-term facility. I gave the average amount of stay because that plays into how you spend those funds down. And then most of the students are placed by guardians or insurance. So how do they get to the facility?
There it is.
Sorry, is there a question? Just a reminder, please mute your line if you're not asking a question. But again, this section is important as we review the CFAs and determining if something is allowable or not. Even though we visited all the facilities, there are about 77 facilities out there.
It has.
It serves as a to take a look and make sure
we can't remember that next time. I think it's something from
the facility is.
All right, thank you, Dennis.
no problem.
All right, bye-bye.
We're getting some feedback there. If you guys could just double check and mute your phones for me. I'm a little hesitant to do it on my side because I don't want to cut our audio again since WebEx is being a little fickle with us today.
Okay. For question number 3, describe the process for how the LEA will evaluate and monitor the facilities participating in the Title I-A neglected program. So the district will monitor the facility program with on-site monitoring not less than once every 3 years. So that is the minimum requirement, but I know that several of the facilities have been monitored by the LEA much more frequently. A lot of you do that yearly. So just detail out and then include details about how you have monthly calls, inventory tracking. You may have monthly visits on site or quarterly visits on site. So how are you overseeing that program throughout the year?
Mm-hmm. And as we go into this, this would be the 3rd year in that monitoring cycle. So if you haven't already, if you've monitored the facilities, then you can write that and say, we monitored them in the spring of 2018. If you haven't already, then you can be more specific and say, we're planning on conducting the monitoring in the fall of 2019 or in the spring of 2020.
For question number 4, please list any facilities that the district serves that do not generate funds. So there's a possibility that you could serve community day center programs or other facilities that do not generate funds. This is rare, but there is a possibility that some districts may serve other facilities with students that do not actually generate funds under the titles. So these are the assurances from last year. I just pasted them there so that you could see what the assurances were last year. And then I'm going to review, in the next slide, I'm going to review the ones that we have added. Like Dan said earlier, when we eliminated some of the questions, then we added assurances to cover the questions. If we felt like you didn't need to have to type a response to it, then we added it in the assurances. So make sure when you are filling this out that you're not just clicking thinking that it is the exact same as last year. You actually have new things that you are agreeing to this year. So make sure that you review those sections before you check off and agree to them. Okay, we added an assurance that the LEA provides assurance that if the facility is working with students with disabilities, the facility staff is made aware of the student's individualized education programs, or the IEP, and their responsibility for serving this group of students under state and federal law. So that was a question previously. How do you do these services? So this year we made it an assurance.
And again, this question has come up before, but when we talk about assurances, this doesn't mean that you're going in and that you are reviewing every IEP that the student does or following the students around to make sure that they're meeting with a special ed teacher for the amount of hours. It's that you're having that conversation with the facility and that they are providing assurances to you that they are in compliance with IDEA. and that can be done through either a separate set of assurances that you give to them, or that could be done through monitoring, or you could include that as part of your MOU.
Okay, and the last portion of the Title I-A neglected is the related documents that you will be required to upload. So please upload a copy of your each facility's needs assessment. So if you have 5 facilities, we need to see 5 facility needs assessments. If you just have one, then you just have one. And we ask that you split those between the titles. So if you have a Title I-A neglected facility and a Title I-D, make sure that you upload the facility needs assessment in the right section that's appropriate for that facility. And then the most current formal agreement between the facility and the LEA, detailing how communication between the district and the facility happens, any collaboration on the needs assessment, use of the funds, and then the monitoring procedures.
And for the MOUs, some of you work in districts where multiple facilities are run by one organization. So, for example, for Nashville, we have 3 group homes under Youth Villages umbrella. It's okay just to have one MOU with Youth Villages because it doesn't make sense to have the same person sign it 3 times for 3 different group homes. So if they're all under one agency, you could establish one MOU for them. Okay, so hopefully you saw there that we eliminated quite a few questions from Title I-A neglected and really tried to streamline that process. We tried to do the same in Title I-D. It's going to be a little bit more lengthy because this is where the federal requirements are much more specific. So we didn't have as much leeway, but we did the best we could. So we'll see how it goes. So for question number 1, again, just like in Title I-A, this is asking you to provide a description of the facilities to receive the Title I-D Subpart 2 funds. So describing the program. You can see the example there, much like the example for Title I-A neglected. Who is the program? Who do they serve? How long do kids stay there? That, again, really helps us to be able to identify, is this a reasonable use of funds for this type of a facility? Because we might see that funds are going to be used differently in a group home versus a residential setting versus a juvenile detention center. Describing how the funds will be used in the facility. Again, we saw this example in the Title I-A neglected section. Exactly how are the funds going to be used? It should tie back to the needs assessment, that alignment there, and then again that should follow through to the actual budget and what's budgeted in the CFA. We want to see that listed in this section as well. So this question asks, question number 3, how does the LEA successfully transition the students returning from facilities to the public schools with the LEA? What supports are offered? So this is asking specifically about you as an LEA and how you bring students back into the public school. So school staff will participate in a conference call meeting to discuss the student's unique needs prior to reentry into the public school. So again, there should be some formal process that happens when a student comes back from a juvenile detention center or from a residential treatment center, that they're meeting with somebody. They're not just showing up and going to class on their first day, that there's some sort of transition process in there to identify what supports might be needed for them. Question number 4, does the LEA partner with institutions of higher education or local businesses to facilitate post-secondary and workforce success for children and youth returning from facilities? If you don't, then you would explain that there. And if you do, then you would explain that there. So just identifying what post-secondary opportunities you have. This might be different CTE offerings that are offered throughout the district. Some districts have mentoring programs for youth. So anything that you do that would fit into that category, you would list there for question number 4. Question number 5, describe as appropriate how the program will involve parents and family members in an effort to improve the educational achievement of their children, assist in dropout prevention activities, and prevent the involvement of their children in delinquent activities. So this is a space where if the facility does any family engagement type activities, this is a place for them to be able to list that. And so you see the example, Poplar Grove will host a family day for all students. Parents will attend sessions with their child on academic achievement after transition. So a lot of the programs do something like that. They'll have a parent evening or a parent day. They also bring parents in for family therapy. So any kind of the touch points that they have with families to engage them in their educational progress, even treatment team meetings could count for that. We want to see those items listed on there.
I think this is an area that a lot of the facilities are doing these kinds of activities. They just have not voiced that they're doing them. A lot of them have these meetings and have these things, and when you say parent engagement, they don't realize that. So if you would identify that for them so that they will know to put that in that question.
Question number 6. Describe as appropriate how the LEA will work with probation officers and other professionals. And so that term's kind of broad there. So that could be counselors from outside the school, mental health professionals, or DCS, to assist in meeting the needs of children and youth returning from facilities. So really, again, you're just describing that process for facilitating meetings with student's probation officer and any support that you may give as a result of these meetings. So again, even if a child just has a caseworker through DCS, what does that process look like in your school system? Does a school counselor reach out to them? Is there a entry meeting that happens where you gather information, requesting records from the different agencies? Is there ongoing communication with them after the student is there for a week or two? So anything that you do to communicate with these other professionals that are supporting the student's transition back into the public schools, I want to see that identified in this area. Question number 7, describe as appropriate how the program will find alternative placements for children and youth interested in continuing their education but unable to participate in a traditional public school program. Probably the most common offering that we see there is that some districts, due to a student's history or their status when they left the school system, will place them in an alternative learning center, an alternative school for a period of time. Some might offer credit recovery offerings or adult high school or night school or a high-set prep courses for the students. Question number 8, describe the process and frequency regarding how and when the district will monitor the facility to ensure compliance with the Title I-D program. Again, just like in Title I-A, it's a requirement that the LEAs monitor the facilities once every 3 years. If you've already done it, just list when you did it and how you did it. And if you haven't, just list when you plan on doing it in the upcoming year, and that will satisfy that question. Again, a list of the Title I-D assurances, the added assurances. The LEA will ensure the program operated in participating facilities is comparable to programs offered by the public schools that students would otherwise attend. The LEA provides assurances that, when applicable, the facility will coordinate with other federal, state, and local programs, such as programs under Title I of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and career and technical education programs serving at-risk children and youth. The LEA provides assurances that, when applicable, the facility will coordinate with the program operated under the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act of 1974 and other comparable programs. And the LEA will provide assurances that if the correctional facility or delinquent facility is working with students with disabilities, the facility staff is made aware of the student's individualized education programs and their responsibilities for serving this group of students under state and federal law. Again, with our assurances, we are looking for the facility to be providing that assurance to you. This does not need to be a full-on audit of the program to determine this. And again, the 2 documents that we're looking for is a needs assessment completed for each facility, uploaded, and then a copy of the MOU. Again, that question was taken out of Title I-D, so you just upload the MOU. And again, if you have multiple agencies under one parent company, it's okay just to have the one MOU with the one parent company there. Okay. So that was a lot of information. And we're going to send this PowerPoint, and then we'll get it transcribed. We'll send you the recording. We really hope that this is able to serve as a reference point for you guys so that when you're sitting down in front of the CFA, you can pull up the questions and kind of know our thought process on that. But again, outside of that, we are available to help you guys with this process leading up to the CFA. So if you're typing a response and you go, I don't know about this, or I don't know if this is going to be an acceptable response, feel free to shoot Aaron and I an email. Feel free to pick up the phone and call us. We really try our best to get back to everybody within 24 hours, if not that day. We want to help you guys have a successful CFA because I think it makes it easier for everybody all around. Aaron will be out until March 15th. So up until March 15th, all of you in West Tennessee and MNPS, feel free to contact me or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to step in and help you guys out. Again, we really want to encourage that because answering questions on the front end is oftentimes a lot easier. So that is all the information that we have. We're going to stay on the line here to answer any questions that you guys may have. And I'm also going to look in the chat box here as well. Let me pull that up.
Please do enter any questions that you may have into the chat box now so that we can see them.
So there's a question in the chat box about the application. We decided to do away with the application for this year and just go with the needs assessment. Our justification for that is allowing the CFA to serve as the application. So again, trying to streamline things and eliminate where we can to make the task more manageable. So again, there's no need for an application from the facilities. You would just be filling out the CFA as the application. The two documents that will be uploaded are the needs assessment and the MOU.
Hey, Dan, this is Scott from Murray County.
Yes.
Since we hired the teacher at the Juvenile Detention Center, will our MOU need to just reflect it, or do we need an MOU at all?
Because your staff are the only ones that would be interacting with the equipment and services there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so far as the education, yes.
Good question. Scott, that's a great question. I haven't gotten that before. Can I think on that one, and I'll send out a response to the greater group about that. So to clarify your question, Scott's saying, if we use all of our own staff in the Title I-D program, and they're the only ones that are using the Title I-D equipment and services, is it necessary to have an MOU? That's a great question, and so let me think on that for a day, and let me get back to you, Scott, if that's okay.
That's great. Thank you. I didn't know if you heard me. I said thanks. That'll be fine.
Thank you for your patience. Yeah, so a question is, if a delinquent facility does not receive Title I delinquent funds, that we don't complete this info for them. It's just for the facilities that do. So yeah, that's correct. If they're not receiving the Title I funds, and they do not need to fill out all of this information. That's probably a larger conversation if they're not receiving funds, and it might be something that your consultant's already aware of. But if a facility is refusing funds or doesn't want to receive them, that's definitely a larger conversation we would want to have offline to explore, that they feel like the paperwork's too much or what barriers there are to getting the funds to the kids there. But again, if they're not receiving the funds, you do not need to fill that out. We'll give it another minute here. Can we show the dates again?
Yeah.
Scroll back up here. With the dates, I think that's asking about the
timeline.
Needs assessment.
So for the date, these are just suggested dates. We put out, when we did the fall trainings, and then we did and we presented at ESSA, there was a one-pager on the dates, the suggested dates, And yes, we had suggested dates for sending the needs assessment out to the districts. I mean, from the district to the facilities, just to give you a good 2-week window to get it back, so that when you're planning and starting to fill out that actual CFA, that you would have that back in time. We just ask, those are suggested dates, but we just ask that you do that to give yourself enough time to read through and work with whatever they have responded, and if you have to send it back to them to get more clarification, or if there needs to be a meeting after that you have that time and you allow yourself that time before the CFA opens for you to start filling out the actual documents in the CFA.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, again, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. I hope that this was useful to you guys and practical. I appreciate everybody's patience at the beginning as we figured out our technical difficulties, so thank you for that. And again, if you have questions, we're available. Feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you.